Something I feel often goes overlooked in Borderlands 3 is just how incredibly Gearbox managed to iterate on the Circles of Slaughter. These pieces of content were often considered pretty bad in previous games, being boring slogs for often very minimal reward. But in 3, these have become beloved staples of the endgame, offering a fantastic source for world drops alongside unique legendaries, and just being enjoyable areas of mobbing and mayhem, all narrated by the wonderful Mr. Torg himself. Today, I want to talk about how we got here and where we can go, covering the history of these circles across the Borderlands franchise and how they could potentially return in the future. Of course, we'll start where it all began with Borderlands 1, and Borderlands 1 actually had two variants of circle gameplay, being the actual Circle of Slaughter missions and Mad Moxxi's Underdome DLC. I'm going to go over each of these separately, starting out here with the circles. The actual Circle of Slaughter missions were incredibly rudimentary. There were three, being the Circle of Death, which had 3 rounds, the Circle of Slaughter, which also had 3 rounds, and the Circle of Duty being the hardest and longest with 5 rounds. Each round would spawn a few waves of enemies before completing and unlocking the next mission. The rewards for each round was generic gear, XP, and money. These missions were not repeatable. The Death and Slaughter arenas were incredibly small with some cover strewn about to play around, with Duty being a much larger arena with a bit more varied elevation. These arenas were fine for the missions that they held, but again, everything was pretty damn primitive, a little boring, and the rewards weren't anything too spectacular. The original circles were just fine for a mission that you did once and never really thought about again. The Underdome is the main component of the Mad Moxxi's Underdome Riot DLC, providing 3 arenas to fight through, being Hellburbia, the Angelic Ruins, and the Gully. Each arena provided 5 rounds with 5 waves for a total of 25 waves until completion. Each round has different modifiers to enemy health, shields, and damage, with every subsequent round increasing these values. Every round beyond round 1 also comes with modifiers that can impact gameplay in various ways, with these modifiers being re-rolled on each wave. These waves also come with themes such as horde waves or gun waves, which will spawn appropriate enemies, with the 5th and final wave of every round being the boss wave, of course spawning a boss alongside a few enemies. These bosses aren't anyone new and are just returning from elsewhere in the game. Every single round and wave is given an intermission period upon completion, in which the modifier is re-rolled while mega health and ammo packs fall from the sky. Now, I think the Underdome actually gets a lot of unfair hate. That being said, it does also get some fair hate, but we'll get to that. At its core, I think it's an incredibly interesting mode held back by a couple of major things. Let's start with the positive though. The theme here is fucking awesome. If you've already seen my video on Chaos Chambers, you'll probably already know my love for the murder game show vibes, and this is no exception. Moxxi as the announcer is fucking fantastic, and having a crowd chant when you kill shit, cheering you on between rounds, and participating in the various countdowns is just awesome. The theme here has been absolutely nailed. The arenas are also pretty well designed for the most part. They're open but not too big, usually have fantastic sight lines, lots of verticality, and a hell of a lot of cover to play around. They really do allow you to play the rounds out however you want, whether it be long range or close quarters. While there are some scenarios where there's just a few enemies left and you'd have to go hunt them down, the size of the arenas doesn't make it too obnoxious. A few also had some specific map mechanics, such as the teleporter on the Gully. Modifiers are also a fantastic idea to keep things varied between runs, and for the most part, the modifiers are pretty fun. There's definitely some standouts like Vampirism, where you're constantly draining health but heal on kill, and Low Gravity, which of course lowers the gravity, but even the ones I'd say are bad aren't really that bad. Things like X-Gun has a damage boost while the others are nerfed is lame, however the nerf isn't all that punishing and you can 100% just ignore it. The only one I absolutely hated was Spastic, which made enemies move and reload faster, which was just fucking annoying. Of course, I would have preferred if these modifiers just didn't exist, but for being from 2009 and not being absolutely agonizing, I forgive it. Again, none of them are that insanely punishing. The biggest issue with the Underdome is simply that it's a slog, and I think it suffers from this due to being paid DLC. They probably wanted to justify charging that money, so they added more content by making each arena absolute hell to get through. 5 rounds with 25 total waves is almost standard for the general structure we'll see moving forward. However, it is still on the higher end of these arenas. The difference with the Underdome is that each wave is a lot longer and the entire thing is very choppy. It's a constant stop and go between each and every wave due to those intermission periods. On top of that, there's pretty much no point in ever running these arenas again after completing all 3 for the first time. You get that quest completion, that single skill point, and there's no other potential rewards beyond that. You don't even get fucking XP while killing shit in these arenas. Borderlands 2 had 4 circles of slaughter, being the Bandit, Hyperion, Creature, and Magic slaughters. Each slaughter has 5 rounds, with Bandit totaling 18 waves, Hyperion at 25, Creature at 21, and Magic at 21 for the initial 5 rounds. The Magic slaughter, though, also has the badass wave that unlocks after round 5, having 6 more waves and being the first instance of one of these slaughters having a repeatable mission. Each round of these slaughters also usually came with a side objective which would provide more cash and XP reward on completion. BL2 slaughters were still pretty rudimentary, and still quite sloggy. The map design is just overall worse, being a lot more open and bland with cover placement that feels designed more for the enemy's favor than the players. In the case of the Magic slaughter, there's also just straight up traps to fall into. Enemy spawning and density also feels like much more of a problem here. While there's probably more enemies per wave on average than BL1's circles or the Underdome, the maps mostly being larger means that density is going to be worse. The actual spawning mechanics are also to blame here though. Spawns aren't evenly spread throughout the arena, instead being spawned in bunches that are often on opposite ends of the map from each other. This can lead to a lot of sprinting around the arena to take out enemies, especially if one group has time to disperse while you're dealing with the other, forcing you to waste time hunting down individual enemies. The waves also feel significantly longer than most of BL1's circles and maybe just a bit shorter than a wave from the Underdome, but overall even the shortest BL2 circle is comparable to an Underdome arena, able to take between 40 minutes to over an hour depending on the arena. Completion also feels just as disrupted and choppy as the Underdome, if not more so, as you have to run back to turn in a quest each and every round. The rewards here are at least a bit better than BL1, with each arena being the source of some pretty cool uniques. However, 3 of the 4 slaughters aren't repeatable after they've been completed. The exception here is the Magic Slaughter's Badass round, which while it is repeatable and can be a great source of the magic grenade mods and the only way to get the Ogre, I can promise you the world would be a better place if that piece of shit wasn't repeatable. It's like saying pulling out your fingernails is repeatable. Like, yeah, they'll grow back, but why the fuck would I want to do that, you psycho? The pre-sequel by far has the most variety in these battle arenas than any other game, having 3 very distinct options in the Shock Drop Slaughter Pit, the Elite Haxor's Mutator Arena, and the Holodome, all of which were added with different DLCs. The most simple of these is the Shock Drop Slaughter Pit, being almost identical to the slaughters from BL2. You've got 5 different rounds with 3 waves each for a total of 15 waves. Completion of all 5 rounds rewards a unique shield, and returning into the arena after completing all of these missions just summons another 3 waves of enemies. The time to complete on Shock Drop is far shorter than anything I've talked about so far, being only around 20 minutes. The actual gameplay of Shock Drop really doesn't provide much to talk about though. The map is kind of ass, just being a little annoying to navigate. However, it's pretty small, which means there's not tons of time wasted running around to hunt down enemies. There are a few interior sections for enemies to hide in, but I never really found it to be too much of an issue. Overall, Shock Drop is incredibly forgettable and has nothing really too good or too bad to say about it. Because it was significantly shorter than them, I do say it was much better than those present in BL2, but really, it just exists. The Elite Haxor's Mutator Arena is where things start to get a bit more interesting. This arena is just 3 waves of enemies for each completion, being only about 3 to 5 minutes per run. What keeps things interesting though is, as the name would suggest, the mutators. Before starting a run, you can select a game mode, game modifier, and difficulty. The game mode and game modifier will add specific adjustments to the gameplay of the run, the mode being more game-changing with mods such as fighting in a vacuum or a damaging floor, with the modifiers being things like specific buffs/nerfs to weapons or damage types. The difficulty, of course, changes the difficulty of enemies by increasing their health and the damage that they deal, having 10 difficulty settings. Depending on what mode, mods, and difficulty you choose will change the rewards that you you get on completion. Along with that, round 3 of every run has a chance to spawn Shadow Trap, which does of course give you a chance at his drops. These mutators make the arena very reminiscent of the Underdome with its modifiers, but being able to select which ones you want is a very nice touch, allowing you to select what buffs or nerfs you want to take on depending on what works best for your current build, and giving you a better reward the harder you punish yourself like the masochistic little bitch all Borderlands players are. I like this system. It's a very simple execution of it, but it keeps each run feeling fresh, and the difficulty slider can give you a nice goal to reach, which the endgame of TPS specifically is lacking quite heavily in. It's not just the mutators that make this arena fun though. The map and spawning mechanics here are absolutely killer and for sure laid the groundwork for BL3 slaughters. The map is just fucking fantastic. It's incredibly simplistic, but not at all in a bad way. It's very open, not too big, and has a lot of varied elevation with a hell of a lot of jump pads. The elevations here would be obnoxious in any other Borderlands title, but the low gravity and enhanced movement with the Oz kit makes jumping around these platforms very easy and very fun. This arena absolutely uses the strengths of TPS's mobbing to its advantage. As for spawning, at the start of each round, 2 portals open up for enemies to spawn out of. Those 2 portals are the only sections that spawn enemies, meaning you don't have to run around trying to hunt fuckers down from random ass locations because you know exactly what sections they're going to be coming from on a reasonably sized open map without a bunch of bullshit cluttering the arena. Elite Hacksaws is fun and genuinely holds up to this day. But coming off the Mutator arena, we take a step backwards with the Holodome. This is another 5 missions with 24 waves total, again taking about an hour or so to complete. Each of the 5 rounds comes with optional objectives that are a little more in depth than those present in BL2 and therefore a little more fun. Each round also offers one of 2 unique items as a reward on completion. Like the Magic Slaughter, Holodome also has a 6th repeatable badass round with 7 waves. This round doesn't have a side objective and rewards 1 random unique item from the pool of items offered by the last 5 rounds. The arena here is fucking massive. It is very open with some varied elevation and jump pads strewn about, but even with those jump pads, traversing from one side of the arena to the other takes a frustratingly long amount of time. Oh yeah, there's also a massive fucking hole in the center of the arena that is instant death if you fall into it. There's also some changes that periodically happen to the arena here and there, like the whole thing becoming a vacuum with oxygen zones moving around it, or a huge section of the floor becoming a blender. But honestly, I kinda just forget these are happening most of the time and they don't really do much to impact the gameplay. With the arena being this big, you'd need a hell of a lot of enemies for the density to feel good, but unfortunately that's not the case here at all. There are tons of enemies, especially in the badass round, but the arena is just too big for there to not be downtime in combat. It also has the same spawning issue as BL2 where the enemies are spawned in clumps just randomly around the arena, which leads to you spending more time wandering the vast emptiness of the Holodome than you do actually killing shit. On top of that, some of the enemies that spawn have this really fun ability to just send you straight downward. Combo this with being 20 minutes into the badass round, about to complete wave 7 and the previously mentioned fuck you chasm in the center, and you get generational trauma. Here's the thing though. While the Holodome has all these issues, there's something here. This is easily the most fun that I've had running an arena out of the ones that I've talked about so far, with the only one to top it being the Mutator arena. The enemies you fight here are fun, and when combat is actually going, it's a blast. This is most likely just due to the fact that TPS mobbing is some of the most fun gameplay available in this franchise, and the Holodome is being carried by that. But I mean, I think that proves that there's potential here. The enemy spawn count in a vacuum is also actually good. Again, it's only bad because of the size of the Holodome. If this map was maybe half the size, the Holodome would actually hold up decently well. That being said, that'd be the absolute bare minimum to help it reach its potential. Giving it the same spawn method of the Mutator and maybe having the badass wave randomly select a side objective from the previous rounds could have made it a contender for one of the best arenas. Hey, show of hands, who forgot what the point of this video was? I don't blame you. It has been 13.5 minutes and I have just been yapping about every game other than the subject of this video. But I think it's important to see where we've come from to understand just how much better where we're at is. Borderlands 3 has 3 circles of slaughter: the Slaughter Shaft, Slaughter Star 3000, and the Cistern of Slaughter. Shaft is filled with COV bandits, Star is Mollywan troops, and Cistern is innocent wildlife. Each of these follow the same design, a single repeatable mission containing all 5 rounds, with rounds 1 and 2 having 3 waves, rounds 3 and 4 having 4 waves, and round 5 having 5 for a total of 19 waves, waves, except the Cistern, which also has 4 waves on round 2 for a total of 20 because it's a different little bitch. Each round also comes with pretty simplistic side objectives like kill X amount of enemies with Y method, completion of which just gives you an additional loot explosion at the end of the run for every side objective completed. The end of the run will also spawn a red chest as a reward. A full run from round 1 to 5 takes around 15 to 20 minutes. Oh, and right, did I mention Mr. Torg is the announcer of all of them? That's f***ing right! During the final wave of round 5, each slaughter also has a unique boss. Shaft has Titan, an enraged Goliath. Slaughterstar has Blue Fire and Red Rain, 2 massive Molly-1 mechs that sandwich the arena, and Cistern has the Tremendous Rex, a big fucking dinosaur with guns stapled to its temples. Cistern also summons multiple Alacritus Vanda that share a loot pool with the Broodmother on wave 4 of round 5, which could be considered a mini-boss. All of these bosses have unique legendary drops. The map design here, I believe, is the best of any of the previous iterations, being most similar to the original BL1 circle arenas, but overall much better and much more interesting. All of them are quite open and pretty damn cool, with varied terrain and great uses of elevation. Sightlines are fantastic, and in most cases you can see either the entire or at least a vast majority of the arena from any given location. Slaughterstar has the most potential for having to run around and hunt down enemies, and it does definitely happen from time to time, but navigating the map isn't nearly as obnoxious as when the issue previously came up. All of the slaughters also take from the Mutator arena's spawning mechanics, with a specific spawn location lighting up with red alert lights at the start of each wave, telling you exactly what section of the arena to focus on. The enemy density here is also absolutely perfect. Even on Slaughterstar, again the biggest map, there's pretty much always something for you to be shooting at with next to no downtime. The BL3 slaughters also nail rewards and replayability. For one, all 5 rounds being contained to a single repeatable mission makes it feel less like just a lame questline and displays it more as an actual piece of endgame content. They're also not only just fantastic sources of world drops, the Slaughter Shaft especially so, and even more so with a Schluter equipped, but a lot of the dedicated drops from their bosses are also great. Now, while it may sound potentially annoying to have to run through the entire 5 rounds just to get a single chance at a drop from a boss, you actually don't have to do that. Dying or just fast traveling back to the start of the map will simply reset the round that you were on, meaning killing the boss and resetting allows you to farm the drop while only having to run the final round again. The heavy amounts of mobbing also lends itself nicely to farming non-unique weapons from the mail system or grinding XP for vault cards. All of this combined means replaying these arenas always has value, but the biggest point in favor of this is just simply that it's fun. I enjoy running the BL3 slaughters whether or not I have a reason to because they're just fun mobbing sections. If I want to turn my brain off and shoot shit, the slaughters provide me with exactly that. But they can also function as great places to test out your builds, as the difficulty bumps between each are great stepping stones. While they don't have specific orders to be completed in, generally I consider Cistern as the easiest, Star as the next step up, and Shaft as the hardest due to the amount of badass spawns and varied health bars. Running a build through these 3 pieces of content can really help you see where it may be struggling. Overall, the Borderlands 3 slaughters are amazingly designed pieces of endgame content that iterate on almost every mechanic of them from previous games, and 100% for the better. They offer up great rewards, an amazing place to test out builds, and most importantly, are just damn fun. But is there any way to make them better in the future? Honestly, I don't think so. But wait, before you click off, that being said, that doesn't mean I don't have other ideas. I do think that the slaughters have been absolutely nailed. I'm genuinely not sure there's any more that they themselves should be iterated on beyond just giving us more. I mean, hell, I was disappointed in BL3 when we didn't get a slaughter alongside each DLC centered around each of their unique enemy types. And listen, prior to BL3, I fucking hated these things. But the arena, mechanics, rewards, and just overall gameplay, I feel for the most part is perfect. The only real complaint I have for the current slaughters are the side objectives. I would love for these to have a little more depth, like maybe spawning a capture point that you have to complete, or collect spines from the things that you kill. Just something a little more involved. But I don't think that these should be added to slaughters. No, I think slaughters should return, but stay as they are. But the crazier shit should be dumped into the Underdome. That's right, your boy wants the Underdome back, baby! Listen, as I said, the Underdome had problems, but they aren't unfixable problems, as I think was showcased by the pre-sequel's Mutator arena. So let's just shove these 2 modes together. Moxxi returns as the host of the Underdome, the sexiest and bloodiest murder game show on Pandora. 5 rounds, 5 waves each round, but the length of these waves are reduced to have a run average to around 30 to 35 minutes max. This mode should be a longer option next to the slaughters, but not so long that it's agony to get through. This can easily be done by having earlier waves be shortened dramatically, while the later waves are the ones that get longer. Along with that, cutting out the multiple minutes worth of downtime due to intermission sections would help a hell of a lot. Keep the health and ammo refill intermission between rounds, but each wave should just reroll modifiers quickly and get back into the action. Of course, also take after the spawning mechanics that are present in the slaughters and the Mutator arena, where it tells you which section of the map enemies will be spawning in. This is going to be especially important because I think the map size of the Underdome should stay similar to that of BL1. Having these maps be larger is cool and better fits that live Coliseum vibe. It's just a balancing act of making sure there's no real downtime to combat. If it still becomes an issue that there's some straggler enemies that have to be hunted down, just make the wave completion requirement be killing only like 90% of enemies. As I said as well, this could be where you could add the more interesting objectives. Have supply crates that drop ammo and gear fall from the sky that you have to defend for a period of time until they open. Towers that rise up from the ground that you have to climb to the top of. Things that actually modify the map in some way that also serves to provide extra rewards. This also adds more options for the player to interact with the map itself. But you can also do this by having maps have various map features such as teleporters, jump pads, things like core sploders or mentonats from Bounty of Blood, or things that can even make the run easier if you know how to activate them. For example, you could have like a big ass cannon on a map where you have to find a power core, plug it in, and once you do, that cannon is active for the rest of the run. Along with this, modifiers should also be more interesting than just X more or less damage with Y. Low gravity or big head mode. All guns have a lowered fire rate but shoot 5 times the projectiles. Things that are goofy and fun but still change the way that you have to go about a wave. And finally, actual rewards. Having unique bosses with unique drops could be cool on the boss waves, but that's sort of the slaughters thing. Keep it thematically appropriate and maybe have a sort of gift shop you exit through where you can spend some sort of currency that you acquired during a run, which you can then use to buy the specific gear that you want, rolling it randomly with each purchase similar to the vault card gear. This currency can be earned at a higher rate during a run by selecting more of the generic modifiers and difficulty at the start of the run, similar to the Mutator arena. But that's just my thoughts and suggestions on the matter. If you've got your own, I'd love to read them down in the comments below. If you like these sorts of discussion videos about Borderlands, then you're in luck because I've got a whole playlist dedicated to them. And if you're looking forward to more, definitely consider subscribing because I enjoy making them. Down in the description will also be a link to my Twitch channel where you can follow to be notified of when I go live, and just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.